Alright, hey guys, I don't know if this video will ever see the light of day, but show y'all some tips and tricks I do to save some money on fishing line, because let's face it, fluorocarbon, braid, mono, it's all, if you buy the right kind, it's expensive. I got my crankbait rod here. It runs a little bit. I ran a little bit too big of fluoro on it a long time ago. It's lasted a while, it needs swapped out. So, to show y'all what I do to save some money on them. Now I really want to apply on this one. This one I run straight fluoro all the way. Reason being is for long lining. You know, you don't want to get out there and be long lining a plug, get it down to the backing, and then end up having to hook a fish on it and reel it in with a knot in there. Could break off on you. So flip the bail open, put the brake down. I'm just gonna strip it off a little bit. Now we'll go from there. Another trick that I do is once I have one lined the first time, I always leave a section on there even once I'm done unlining it, simply so I ain't gotta face it down through the guides again. Now, if you look on there nice and close, you'll see that that is not a hollowed out spool. So you can't tie the line through it, and I'm sure you saw it. Put a lap of electrical tape on there. What that does is it keeps the line from spinning when it's on the spool. It doesn't really happen that often with fluorocarbon or mono. It happens real bad with braid if you don't do it. Again, if it's hollowed out and got holes in it, I run straight through the holes and tie it. So leave you out a little stretch, keeps you from having to reline your poles, missing an eye, getting out there and getting frustrated. So let me get some line. We'll move on. All right, so the line I'm going to run on here is Vicious 12-pound fluoro. I run Vicious because it's cheap. I can get it at Academy. Get 500 yards of it for like 20 bucks or something like that. I've never had any issues out of it. I got no complaints with it. So when they start making other stuff that cheap that works as good, I'll go to it. So connecting to my line here, just going to do a simple overhand knot, tie two of them, because theoretically I should never get that low, so it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It just has to get one set of line connected to the other. So one, tie two. The reason I do overhands rather than any other kind of knots, they're kind of small, out of the way. You don't want something big, bulky, knotting up on there, messing with your thumb. It's all about feel. So I know some people can get frustrated by that. Get it up there, clip it nice and close, and we'll start lining. Now with this reel, it is a Lew's BB1. I believe it's a 5-4-1, and it works great for deep cranking. The only problem is I bought it kind of specialized, so I bought it for throwing 6XDs, 10XDs, stuff that's going to run real deep, and that's great. It's fine and dandy, but anything slower or smaller, you just kind of wear yourself out if you want to speed it up a little bit. So we'll get this one spooled up. Like I said, I don't run any kind of mono backing or anything on this one. Strictly for long line. Did it once a long time ago, got into a fish, probably catfish, spooled me out pretty good, and once he got me out on the back and knot gave way. So it's one thing you don't want to have to worry about. Now, I hear people all the time talk about, oh, you filled that reel up too much. The reel's got too much line on it, or not enough, or where do I put it? If you look right there, there's a little, focus, there's a little gold line, and there's actually a chamfer to it, which just means it's got an angle on it. The line goes up to that angle, or right at that gold edge. Any higher and it's too much. Any lower, technically, you won't get the gear ratio out of it you're talking about. Now, when manufacturers make reels, they sell it to you as a 8-2-1 or 7-3-1. That's with a full spool. That means with it fully spooled up, that last couple of turns to get the full the spool all the way filled, it's pulling that much line then. It's not with an empty, it's not with it halfway, it's all the way up to the clevis, all the way, or the chamfer, to where that ring is on that spool. That's where they measure how much line pull it is. So if you're only filling your spools halfway and you're talking about, oh, well, I don't like this brand because it's not fast enough. If you're only filling your spools halfway, you're not getting the full speed out of it. So another thing I like about running these Vicious, comes in a clear pack, poke a hole in it, run my line through it. Now I can go hang it right back up. All right, so moving on. I got my top water here, run straight braid on it. Needs swapped out. You can see it's getting a little dull. So I think it's been on here since I had the reel, which I know has been probably over a year now. So starting to get some breaks on some hook sets and stuff like that. So it's time for it to go ahead and get swapped out. Now, with that being said, does that mean that this line is bad? Absolutely not. It just means that the line that on top is bad. Well, I spoke earlier about, you know, not running half spools because then you don't get your full gear ratio. Well, what do? I'm about to show you what you do. Now, it's a lot easier when you've got more than one reel that you need to swap the line out on. In this case, I've only got one braid rod, or one braid reel that needs swapped out at the minute that runs 30-pound braid. Why do I run 30-pound braid? Because I like to. No other reason, no rhyme, just do. Now, what I'm going to do is something I call double spooling, I guess. Now, what I do is I save all my old spool reels. It's empty, and I'm going to tie up to it. No fancy knot, no nothing like that. Basically, I'm just going to go through it a couple of times, get it to where it pulls up tight, and then I'm going to let it do the rest. All right, now you'll see. I got a completely 100% empty spool. Now, I'm going to show you a trick to keep from having to retie to the spool every time and stuff like that. This is going to make life, it makes it a lot easier for me. So, what I got here, just a piece of 65-pound braid. I've got a double uni knot in it. Now, what I'm going to do with it is feed it through the hollowed spool. And finagle it around just right to where the knot ends up on the inside of the spool, leaving me a smooth junction point to where I ain't got to worry about a knot coming up in there. Alright, so now what I've got is a loop that runs in there, and the knot is off in the spool. So when I'm spooling my new line on there, you know, my old line, it's not going to knot up on me. It's not going to have a lump. It's not going to bug me, all that kind of stuff. So I leave that on there. All my rods have it on there. It just makes life easier tying up to it, because with this loop right here, tie it to it like you tie a lure. San Diego jam knot, whatever you want to tie it to it. Doesn't matter. Now, another thing I do is if I got an old reel that's clicking or clacking or doing something, I don't ever throw it away. This one, in this case, it's not mine. It's my dad's old Abu Garcia Ambassador. And it started not tracking right, clicking a little bit here and there. But what I do use it for is because they have a ton of line capacity. As I do this trick I'm about to show you. So I took the spool off of one, or took line off of one reel. Technical difficulties. So I came off of one reel onto an old spool. Now if I spool that line up the same direction, I end up with the same thing, old line on top. Well, the line on the bottom was good line. It's been unused. It's been sitting under there for a year, no exposure to light, still nice and gray. So what I'm doing is spooling it on this old Ambassador right here. That way, like I said earlier, usually I come off of one reel and go on to another one. I don't have any other ones I'm changing out. Otherwise, I would simply unspool one that in theory, would have bad line on both ends because I'd already done this once before to it. But I don't have one that is that, so I'm just going to flip the line over on this one, which involves either 2 reels or a spool and a reel. So. Like I said earlier, got this loop here. Gonna run it out the eye of the reel. And I'm gonna tie it just like I normally tie to one of my lures, which is either a double San Diego jam knot or a single. In this case, it's gonna be a single, but it's not gonna be as complex. It's gonna be 3 loops and done. So, 1, 2, 3. If y'all want to know some tips or what a San Diego jam knot is, we might get to that later. So, there it is. 30 pound attached to that 65 pound loop. I'm just going to spool it on there. Now, I hear people talk about, oh, well, you got to keep some pressure on it, and too tight, too loose, all these different things. I kind of gave up hope on the whole thing because sometimes I spool them up and they're perfect, which rare to none. Sometimes I spool them up and they're too tight. Sometimes I spool them up and they're too loose. So I just put it to whatever I think it is and spool it, and it'll work itself out when I'm casting later. If it doesn't, I've never had it not work out, but you'll backlash here and there. If you ain't backlashing, you ain't fishing. Now you'll notice that is good dark line. Fresh, never seen the light of day, so I'm ready to start from there. Now, some of you might ask, well, how do I know when my braid's getting old? Oh, well, the tried and true way to tell is when you start breaking off a lot of fish. But y'all know as much as I do, that's the worst way to find out, is to start breaking off a lot of fish. So when I do it, I mean, can't really go by the fade because that's just kind of exposure to sun. It can break down some fluorocarbon lines and stuff like that, but I don't know that it makes too big a difference on braid. So, I mean, mine gets faded and stays faded for a pretty good while. Another thing it does is I don't know what kind of coating it is, probably wax, not 100% sure. Once the wax coating's off of it, it gets limp. You can't really bend it and make it stay in a certain direction or anything. So like this one here, if I take it and fold it in the middle, you see how it's got that pretty good bend to it, nice straight L. When it gets limp, gets all that wax off of it, doesn't stay near as good. So, do either one of those necessarily mean it needs to be changed? Not really. You just got to go off a feel on it, but braid's kind of like one of those things where it starts fishing its best as far as getting action on the lure, sensitivity and everything, right when it's about to go. It's when it starts getting super limber, you can feel it, you can cast it great. It starts backlashing a lot more than usual. You start having to tighten your reels up. That's honestly when mine starts giving me problems. It starts breaking, stuff like that. Now we're gonna move on to my worm rod. It's fluorocarbon, got mono backing. I don't necessarily know that the line is bad. I think it's just got some scarred up spots on the end. Hasn't been that long since I've replaced it. It's 12 pound fluoro, but I'll go ahead and replace it anyway for the sake of video. Again, same thing. Just gonna put it on this spool that I've got a bolt ran through. Put it in my drill and reel it up. Now, I know some of you are going to say, well, why don't you just do it like you did with your braid and flip it? I mean, you could, but fluorocarbons, in my opinion, is more expensive than braid in a lot of times. So, for me, I'd rather just run backing material on it. Because to me, me personally, I think when it's laying there on the deck of the boat, sun's one of the biggest things that damages fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon's clear, so it lets rays through it. If anything, it may even magnify it. You have to research that yourself, but there's no real point in running a whole bunch of it and risk damaging it and trying to flip it and end up with a bad line on each end. So I run backing on mine. It's just some 14-pound monofilament, and it's something you can quick tie to. To be honest with you, there's no surefire way to measure how much you need on there versus how much fluorocarbon you're going to put on top. The way I do it normally is I take a 150 yard spool of fluorocarbon, I run it halfway out, clip it, and then I put as much, I sit there with 2 reels. I reel it up, oh well I need more backing. Reel it off with the other reel, put more backing on it. Reel it back in. Once you get your backing set, as long as you're running the same size line, you should technically never have to touch it. You just run that much backing forever. So let me get this 12-pound back out. And actually, I think I'm going to up the ante on it. I think I'm going to try out 15 this go around. 12 pounds has been a little finicky for me here lately. I've been fishing around a lot of rocks and wood. I broke what I feel like are probably some pretty good fish off here lately. Of course, you know, every fish you lose, that's a 10-pounder, so I don't want to risk it. Now, I've caught some big fish on 12-pound, don't get me wrong. It's worked great. If you're fishing open water, grassy bottoms, stuff like that where you ain't got a whole lot of abrasion going on, 12-pound all the way. But the couple lakes around here I fish a lot are mostly rock bottoms. And I get around a lot of woods, a lot of laydowns. So I just feel a little more confident with that 15-pound range. So I'm going to try it this go around. Now the rod that I've got set up for my worm, it handles that 12-pound like a dream. It's great. But we'll just have to see this go around. I'm going to try this 15 out and see how I like it. You may ask, oh, well, what knot do you tie from your fluoro to your monofilament leader or to your backing? Depends on where I'm at. If I'm in the boat trying to get back out there and get fishing in a hurry, single overhand knot. Just put it on there and go and hope I don't ever get back down to it. Could tie uni knot. Uni knots are typically kind of big, kind of leave a bulge down there. It's all about preference, I guess. A lot of times I do tie the uni knot. So uni to uni. Just in case I ever do get that fish that peels it out. Ain't really ever had it happen. Not to say it won't ever happen. I'd love for it to happen because that means it's probably a big fish, but. And I wet my line out of habit. I've had it burn me a couple of times, so I keep doing it. Again, same thing. I'm gonna run it all the way up until the edge. Now with fluorocarbon, I do try to keep a little bit of pressure on it, just because it can be a pain to deal with. If you do it too loose, you get loops in there. If you do it too tight and then it gets loose later on, it gets loops in it. Again, it's one of those things you're gonna have to go off the field. So again, like I said, guys, the things I do to save money is on braid, I run straight braid on the entire reel. Reel it off of one reel onto another, make sure it's a good line. That way, because that line at the bottom of that braid reel's never hardly gonna see the light of day. If you put it all on there, you're only gonna use about the top 40% maybe, depending on how much you break off of it and have to cut off and everything like that. So theoretically, it should be great line. I've never had any issues doing it. I've never heard of anybody having any issues doing it. And like I said, braid's expensive. You know, $19 a spool probably for some of the stuff I run. I run Power Pro braid. I can't remember how much it is, but it's great. Coming off one reel, going on to another fresh line, you can do it on the water. It works out. And if you do all your reels all about the same time, when you get one, you take it off, you reel off of that one onto another one, off with another one, the one you just did, and you just keep it going until, you know, eventually you have to put new line on the first one, or the very last one, whatever. But That's what I do with braid to save money on it. Fluorocarbon, run a backing material. Helps not waste so much. If you backlash super bad, you don't got to worry about it going deep on nothing but fluorocarbon. You don't waste that much fluorocarbon. Always run a backer, not to mention it alleviates you having to unspool the whole thing and spool it back up the next time around. Don't run any mono really. If I ever get in a situation where I'm using a prop bait, like a jerk prop bait, like a Berkeley Spin Rocket or something, I may run a small leader section, but most of the time on it, honestly, John Cox has got a video out there that's pretty good. If you run 2 or 3, 4 bobber stops in a row, even on the braid, get them down there tight, it'll keep your line held out straight. So most of the time I do that if I'm doing, having to do anything with it. Well, that's my setup, guys. That's how I do it. Didn't have a whole lot of reels to redo today. I just had mostly my worm rod. It's been giving me issues here lately. A lot of break offs, and when I was reeling that line onto the spool here, I did feel a lot of nicks in it. So just bad line. Maybe I backlashed it one too many times or something. But the braid rod, it was getting on up there in life. I broke a couple of fish on top water plugs. Cost me some money. So redid it. The the crankbait rod, honestly, it was probably still a good line. It was just too big. I did it back when all I was doing was throwing big 10XDs, and I thought, oh, I need that big heavy line. Didn't need it, so I downsized my line. Gonna see how it does. Maybe I'll end up putting bigger line back on there, but for now I'm gonna run 12. So we'll see how it goes. You guys take it easy. Maybe these tips helped you out. Have a good day.